Hey guys, this is Independent Lesson 3.2. We're going to look at sampling and data collection today. So I know there's a lot of vocabulary, but good news is it's not super complicated. So first we have sampling with replacement. So this happens when an item or a subject can be selected more than once from a population. A good example of this is like drawing a card from a deck, putting it back, and shuffling again, so that way we can draw. Sampling without replacement occurs when an item or a subject can be selected only once. So this is just, again, if we're looking at this card example, this would be like drawing a card from deck, shuffling the deck without it, and then drawing a second card. We're also going to be looking at 4 different types of sampling. So an SRS, which is what we're calling a simple random sample. So this is probably the easiest and most commonly used sampling method we will do in this class. This is just where every group of any given size or a particular given size has an equal chance of being chosen. A stratified random sample, where first the population is divided into groups based on some sort of shared characteristic. This is called strata. And then a simple random sample from each group is taken. The next method, it's pretty similar to a stratified. It's called a cluster sample, where population is divided into groups, and then a random sample of clusters is chosen. But what makes it clearly different from stratified is that every individual in the randomly selected clusters makes up your sample. And the newest one that's part of the AP curriculum is systematic sampling. So this is where it's some kind of order, so numerical, and then every nth individual is selected, starting at a random spot. That number is usually always given to you. We are also looking at the different types of grouping. So homogeneous grouping, so items or subjects are grouped that are alike in some way. So this is what stratified sampling is, that they are grouped together based on a shared characteristic, something that is the same with everybody. And heterogeneous, so items or subjects are grouped in a way that provides diversity. This is going to tend to be more biased than others, but we'll worry about that when we talk about our bias lesson. And finally, we have our census. This is something you guys are probably more familiar with, since every 10 years our country takes a census. But this is when data is collected on all items or subjects in a population. So looking at taking an SRS, there are 3 ways to do this. Number 3 is the least commonly used. The easiest way, and that's kind of in quotes there, first thing, you write the names or numerical labels of each individual in the population on the same size slips of paper. I know that doesn't seem important, but it is. We're going to place them into some sort of hat or container. We'll mix them well, pull out slips of paper one at a time until we have the required amount. So this first method is also commonly known as the hat trick, because you're pulling things out of a hat, kind of like a magician would. The other one, which we will go over together, is using technology. So we're going to label each individual in the population with a distinct numerical label from 1 to whatever population number is. We're then going to randomize by using a random number generator to obtain however many numbers we want from 1 to our population size. And a random digits table This is the least common method. It was more common when the course was brand new to the AP curriculum. Since then, it hasn't really been used too much, but sometimes free response questions still use them, so we have to be careful. So talking about lowercase n and uppercase n. Lowercase n is going to represent the sample size. And capital N is our population size. Now let's take a look at some examples here. All right, so example 1, we are going to use alphabetical listing of the students in our class. So we're going to assign a numerical label to each student. One thing that has not been really disclosed to you guys, we have 23 students in this class. And we're going to use technology and we're going to use calculators to pick an SRS of 10 students. So that is our sample size. That is our lowercase n. We're going to record the 10 randomly generated numbers below. And I'm not going to give you the names of those, but it's important that we at least know how to select the numbers. So the way we're going to do that, so we're going to go over to a calculator. And to get to a random number generator, we can just hit the math button. We want to scroll over until we get to prob, or it may show up as PRB, depending on the calculator. We want the one that says rand int. Now, some calculators will give this lower upper end thing, and some will just give rand int parentheses. It doesn't matter regardless. We just want to make sure our lowest roster number that we're going to choose is 1. You want to hit a comma if you're on the older models. We want our highest roster number to be chosen as well, so 23, since we have 23 students. And we want to choose our sample size, which is 10. So doing 1, 23, 10, and then hitting enter, and possibly hitting enter again is going to spit out this list of numbers. So that means we are going to pick the 22nd, 21st, 4th, 12th, 10th, 17th, 2nd, 8th, 23rd, and if we scroll over to the right here, there should be one more number, 5. And that'll bring us back to our lesson here. So that way we can continue on. So again, to get to that command on a calculator, you would need to hit the math button. You want to scroll over to something that says PRB, and we want the rand int command, basically random integer. We want our first number to be 1, our highest number to be the amount of students that we have, and our third to be the total amount of numbers that we want to pull. Doing that command is going to give us this list of 10 roster numbers. Looking at example 2 here for table D, again, this is the random digits number. This isn't totally used so much anymore, but again, it shows up sometimes on free response questions, so it's worth to go over. Just to remind ourselves, we have 23 students. And we are going to look at recording the first non-repeating numerical labels along with no names. And since we're dealing with table D, part of that definition that was in the description of the sampling method is that you want 2 digits. So really, we are picking digits from 0, 1, as in 1, roster number 1, 2, 2, 3. These are our valid choices. Everything else outside of that is not valid. So you're going to go in and look at the random table. So 71, that's not useful. 48, 70, 99, 84, 29. We have a digit, 7. So far we have roster number 7. 71 is not useful. 48, not useful. 63, 61, 68, 34, 52, 62. We have another number, 22. And we're going to keep going. We have a digit at 10. 25 is just outside of our range. 13 is our next digit. So far we have 4 numbers. 87 not valid, 38, 15 is a valid digit. So now we have 5. 98, 95 not valid. 5 is a valid digit. Let's see, 29 just outside of our range. 9 is a good digit. So now we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. We just need 3 more numbers to complete our sample. 35, not valid. 92, nope. 75, nope. 18 is our 8th number here. 68, no. 71, 36. And again, you're just going to keep going until we get digits that work. We do have this 15, but since we've already written that number down, we actually don't want it because we only want non-repeating numbers. So 45, nope. 80, nope. 81, nope. 50, no. And we're going to keep going. 2 is another digit. And luckily, let's see here. We do have 2 again, but we don't have it repeating. So far we have 9, and normally we would go back and we would circle through. So I'm going to erase this little block here because it turns out when we go back to the start, 37 is not valid, but starting again now is going to get us back to 14. So now we have all the digits using table D. This is why it's not really a common method anymore, because it takes a lot of work and you have to go back and forth and cross out a bunch of stuff. Looking at a random sample. So the scenario here is that we are in, or you are in AP Psych, and you need to take a random sample of students in your high school to participate. We need to survey 100 students. So there's our sample size there. In detail, we're going to describe how to take our sample of students with the following techniques. So taking an SRS, there's a couple different ways. Doesn't really matter, but let's just say we're going to do this with the slips of paper. So first thing, we are going to label all the students. from 1 to, let's say we have 3,000 kids in our school. We're going to label them from 1 to 3,000, and we're going to write the numbers on equal-sized slips of paper. We're going to toss the paper into a container and we're going to mix well. We are going to pick, for our last step, 100 unique, and that's important as well, 100 unique numbers. And those students that correspond to those selected numbers are the ones that are surveyed. So part of the AP curriculum when we talk about sampling methods is then also talking about advantages and disadvantages of those methods. Well, for this scenario, if we're taking a random sample of all the students at our high school and we're doing an SRS, well, one disadvantage of this is that this is very, very time consuming. This is a lot of kids. And there's, quite frankly, easier ways to do this. Looking at stratified random samples. So this is the one where we divide it into groups based on a shared characteristic. So let's say we divide students into grade levels, as in 9th, 10th, 11th, and 12th. So now all the students are grouped based on their shared characteristic. We are then going to take an SRS of, and since we're dealing with 4 groups, let's say we're taking an SRS of 25, just so that way each group has a certain amount. And just like before, those students selected are the ones that are surveyed. Now, this is also something that we want to think about in terms of disadvantages. And let's think for a minute. What are some disadvantages of splitting them into the grade levels and then taking an SRS from each group? So here, well, there's really nothing here, except that this could also be very, very time consuming. Same as the SRS. There's really nothing super bad about it. Looking at taking a systematic sample. So this is the one where we're going to pick a random starting point. So we kind of want to start out the same way as an SRS. So we'll label each student from, again, let's estimate that our total school size is 3,000. We're going to label each student from 1 to 3,000. And we want to use some type of technology, usually a random number generator. So like that rand_int command works really well to pick, and we want to pick a random starting spot. And let's say that that starting spot, let's say we run that command and we're doing rand_int 1 to 3000, and I only want one. And let's say it's going to pop out every, oh, I don't know, every 23rd. So it's going to give me that number 23. From there, I'm going to select every 23rd student until 100 unique students have been selected. Now, some disadvantages to taking a systematic sample here. Well, by doing this, it's kind of a slim chance, but here there is a chance of getting too many of one type of student. Like too many juniors, too many freshmen, stuff like that. But the other thing that we still have to label these kids. So this is still a time-consuming effort, which is why usually, because of all these things combined, stratified and SRS samples are, like I said, the most common because there's not too much that's wrong with them. They're fairly low biased as well. All right, so that's it for our independent lesson 3.2. Next time we'll be looking at different types of bias and how to avoid those and what can affect the amount of bias we see. If you guys have any questions at all, please let me know and I'll be happy to answer them. Thanks, guys.